Okay, let's talk a little bit about measuring a garage. Here's the front picture of the house we decided to take on, and I'll show you why we picked this particular house. You'll notice as we walk back in here that it goes completely to the deep. It's the same as the measurement on the left-hand side. But what you don't see with a closed garage door is that this garage comes over, and that part that you see right there, there is actually interior finished space inside that wall. The inspector for the tax department would never realize that that space was there. And there's also another section you'll see here on the right hand side where there is a little alcove that goes into the house. There's actually a little step up deck into that, and that space would not be seen. So the garage measurements from the tax department would be totally different than what the actual garage measurements are. So you just got to make sure that these walls, that when you do these measurements, that remember that you are looking at the finished exterior wall for that finished living area. So when you're measuring a garage, you stop at the beginning of that sheetrock wall. Here I'm just showing you how when we're coming in here, we're measuring straight across, and where I'm at is there's finished living area behind there. So we're just taking the measurements with the disto and coming across and trying to figure out, making sure that we're going to insert that finished living area into our sketch to make sure the house has all the square footage that it should have. And this particular house, the floor plan has it about, I think it was 42 feet smaller than what the actual measurements were, and part of that area was inside this garage. But where I'm measuring there, you would see that's where the wall goes straight across, and if you're just looking at it from the outside, you would think that's where the measurement stops. And as you can see, that space there would be taken away from the finished space. You know, what you would think would be finished outside is actually not. If you look at the floor plan and kind of follow this garage measurement, you can see we've got 8.9 over on the left side, 15.1, 14.4, then we've got 4.8 by 6.8. And the actual floor plan, you know, you can see those dimensions on the floor plan, and some tax departments will keep a copy of these floor plans, but a lot of them will not keep a copy of it, and they just draw it from the outside. Here's another house where we're going to look at how we measured the garage, and I mean, it's a basic ranch style house. And we're just starting on the exterior wall, and we're measuring to the inside wall. Now the measurement, on a typical measurement, you would add 5/10 or 6 inches for that exterior wall. But in this case, whenever you measure a garage, your measurement stops where you reach that interior wall. That interior wall is actually the exterior measurement for your finished living space. So just think about that again. Now remember, when you're measuring a garage, your measurement stops at the beginning of the sheetrock or drywall space. And when you're measuring from the outside, you can see where when you have a vinyl siding like that, the measurement actually starts on the lowest part of that vinyl siding. That is actually the exterior wall of this house. So in this case, we have to put a tape measure on this little vinyl cap that's actually about an inch. You know, it just depends. It can be a ½ inch, it can be 2 or 3 inches sometimes. But you have to remember to deduct that when you're doing the measurement. Now on this side, there was a full straight pull on this side, but we have to know how much space is garage. And here's another area where we would not know what was included unless we could look inside of that garage. You know, the tax department would think that this was just a regular rectangle, and they wouldn't know this space was in there, and that actually takes away from the finished living space. So in this case, there's going to be less square footage in this house than the tax department would have. Now here we're going to take the disto, and you can actually measure it a couple of ways. You can take the measurement from an interior wall and go all the way across, and then just add the 5/10 or 6 inches for the exterior wall. Or you can take your measurement from where the exterior wall actually begins and then just go to the corner there and make sure in this measurement you don't have to add for anything. You're already starting at the exterior wall in this case. So now you're just going to measure this wall going back to the corner there. And then we're going to measure back to the end of the house. And you can see where the door's open going into the finished living area. But you're measuring these, and don't forget you're rounding, and the wall where we've stopped the measurement in this case is actually the boxing for the staircase. And you got to remember on your staircases, well, let's look inside first before we do this, but we're just measuring where this wall is, even though all of this space is going to be included within this garage measurement. Now as we walk around here, we're going to look inside, and you're going to see that this closet is basically just the space underneath the garage. Now a lot of people will go in and make this more confusing than it needs to be, and they see a sloped wall. They want to measure to the 5-foot mark and then start your measurement there. But you got to remember the way that you count stairs. Stairs count as finished living area, and let me say that this is the staircase to a bonus room. So there's just one room up above this garage, but the staircase is inside the finished living area. So actually though, this staircase is going to count within the bonus room. It's also going to count inside the garage, although this time it's going to be unfinished living area. But you're making the measurement all the way across the back wall, and some of these measurements you can get from the exterior wall as well as the inside wall. And we're measuring this little segment just to know how far across we are, but we basically have a full length pull on there that we can measure the garage from the outside wall. Now we're going over to the exterior wall in this case, and it's a straight shot. Then we've got a little pocket that comes back out, and the measurements are actually identical on the exterior, so you've got you can double check your measurements, or most time you would just measure that from the exterior wall. Going back out this little section, and then we're coming back out to the front. We always have more measurements than we probably need just to double check and make sure that everything is accurate. But measuring garages, just remember that you want to come to the interior wall and your measurement stops there. Okay, if you look at the floor plan in this case and just kind of follow along, you can see the measurements, and it's pretty easy to see as long as you got the garage door open. But for a tax inspector or anybody just looking from the exterior wall, you're assuming that you have just a rectangle garage, and many times that's just not the case. And it's there can be all kinds of storage areas. There could be steps to an attic, any kind of room. They all can't be quite as simple as this one. And this is actually a third garage bay. There's a 2-car garage in front of this with this third bay behind that. This would be impossible to see from the outside, and of course you can see why they did it. They have a little room to give their doggies a bath there, and it's a great space. But we wish they could all be like this and just be the simple basic rectangles on there. But the key is open the garage door, make sure you know what's inside that garage space.